Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Today we got a double unusualness in this presentation. This is a Strombecker kit that is plastic, not wood. This is their first plastic, all plastic kit, I should say. And it's also a kit of a very unusual aircraft, a Delta Wing seaplane, the Convair XF2Y Sea Dart. So Strombecker had been adding wood or plastic parts to their wood kits in the early 50s. We saw that with the salamander or salmon that we did a review on earlier, where the wings and tail and a lot of it was plastic. So they finally took the dive into producing an all plastic kit with this one. This is their first one. This is a 1956 issue of the kit, which was originally issued in 1955. There's a slight variation on this kit, which we'll go into when we look at the kit itself. It's a 1/60th scale, and it's kit number D25-100. So the Sea Dart was a very unusual aircraft in that it was a seaplane that was designed to exceed Mach 1, and it's also a jet, which there's only a couple of other jet seaplanes that were produced. The Seamaster, is a large aircraft, and there's a couple of British aircraft that were jet powered, and I think the Russians may have made one as well too. So it was originally designed to overcome the issue of the Navy wanting a supersonic aircraft, but the problem of supersonic aircraft, early jets, in fact, on carriers, were that they landed really fast and needed long runways for takeoff, which, of course, on a carrier is not available. Real high-speed aircraft, particularly supersonic aircraft, also had very bad low-speed handling, which was not the best for a carrier as well. So, 1948, the Navy put out a request for a supersonic aircraft, and Convair met it with the idea of making it a seaborne aircraft to overcome those issues with the contemporary aircraft carriers at the time. So the original idea was they were going to take a Delta Dagger, put it on skis, and everything would work out great. So the Navy was impressed enough with what Convair was talking about doing, and they ordered a couple of prototypes in 1951. Shortly after, they ordered 12 production aircraft, even before the prototype was completed. And then 4 of those were to be designated as service test aircraft, and then they ordered an additional 8 on top of that. So in addition to the Delta Wing, the fuselage was watertight. So when it was on the water, when it was just stationary or low speed, the skis were actually retracted, and it would just kind of float there with the tail or the rear end of the wings would be touching the water and just kind of float around. When it got to above 10 miles an hour is when the skis would extend, and it would start to get up on the skis in order to be able to take off. And it's when you see the film of the Sea Dart taking off, you see a real quick rotation on it to get up off the water, because that was a lot of drag, and a very high angle of rotation when they were first taking off, so they could gain some speed. So the skis, as I mentioned, weren't extended until they took off. And as you can see on this artwork here, there's also a pair of wheels at the end of the skis. There's also a tail wheel. So this was actually kind of an amphibian, and it could go onto hard surface. And when it was going up and down the ramp, it would actually end up being almost horizontal, going down before getting into the water. So it was designed with a pair of jet engines. They were supposed to be XJ46s with afterburners. They were 4,500 pounds thrust dry and 6,100 pounds with the afterburner. But that engine was an experimental engine and wasn't ready when the prototype was completed, so they were substituted in some J34s, which had about half the amount of power at 3,400 pounds. The first flight was kind of by accident. The test pilot was doing some high-speed taxiing, and the aircraft ended up getting airborne about 100 feet or so. That was on 14 January 53, but the official first flight was April 9th of 53. So the first prototype, being underpowered, was extremely sluggish. The hydroskis were not as good as they thought. They eventually replaced this dual ski arrangement with a single ski, and that did work out a lot better. But those pre-production aircraft ended up all having this dual ski arrangement, which was not quite as well. The aircraft, in addition to being underpowered, suffered from the fact that there was a lot of transonic drag on it. So this was designed before the idea of area rule was understood, which then ultimately helped the F-102, because that also had problems, breaking the sound barrier as well. But this aircraft did not get that redesign in order to account for area rule design on it. So as a result, the only way that this thing could go Mach was in a shallow dive, which it eventually did. The second prototype, which was one of the pre-production ones, the service test aircraft, was able to do that on 3 August of 54, but it did that in a shallow dive. So the actual second prototype had been canceled, so they just utilized the service test aircraft, because the writing was kind of on the wall. By this point, the Navy was developing bigger carriers, and better aircraft were able to operate off of carriers, which kind of made this aircraft redundant. The production aircraft was to have 4 20mm cannons, Mark 12s, and also a bit of folding fin rockets, and possibly guided missiles. But nothing was ever fitted to any of the aircraft that were built. So the project was canceled. Ultimately, a total of 5 aircraft were built. 3 of those flew. The two others never received their engines. And there was one last idea that they had thought about utilizing these on submarines. There's a paper concept of 3 of these being stored on a submarine. There'd be a little elevator that would bring them up on the deck behind the conning tower, and they'd be launched from there. But that never got past some paper ideas. So let's take a look at the kit itself and see what we got. So you've got all plastic, Strombecker, authentic airplane, molded plastic parts, easy to assemble, and the XF2Y Convair Sea Dart. On the end, we've got more information on that. The wingspan of the kit, 6 3/4, length of 10 1/4. And there's our kit number, and the dollar, or this 100 was a suggested retail price of $1. The other end of the kit, similar. On this side here, got a lot of information about the Sea Dart itself, and where Strombecker is located. On this end, we've got some detailed photographs. And the scale, 1/5 to 1 inch. All parts of the molded of durable plastic and authentic detail. Sleek 3-piece fuselage, locking tail and nose section. 1-piece delta wing, complete with the usual hydro skis. And nothing on the bottom. So let's take a look at the inside. So we've got our instructions with, it's like an artist rendering of the completed kit. Some additional photographs, additional information about the kit. Air age models from Strombecker, copyright 55. Now this side is a wall poster, so you can hang this up on your wall and ogle at it and wonder how cool it would be to fly a Sea Dart. Flip side, got our assembly. Got an exploded view here of all the parts, numbering the parts on that. And then we've got a step-by-step assembly down the side. So it looks like you can get this together in nine easy steps. And at the bottom here, you've got a parts list here. If you're missing a part, you could mail in to Strombecker and get replacement parts. So that is our instructions. Here's our decals. These decals are in poor condition. I think this kit may have been exposed to moisture, but they're still intact, possibly even usable. And so this is, they've got a specific aircraft on here, XF2Y-1 135762. So it is a specific aircraft. It's actually one of the service test ones, which would have been a Y aircraft. So it was a Y F2Y1 as opposed to an XF2Y. But that serial number does match up with the first of those service test aircraft. And that was a significant one, and that is the one that did exceed Mach 1. The pilot was a gentleman by the name of Charles Richborg, I think, Rachbourg. I think that's Richborg. So, he's the one that exceeded Mach 1, and it ended up being used in a Navy, or Convair wanted to put on a demonstration to the Navy brass and to the press about some of their new aircraft. So they had the Pogo, the Tradewind, which was a large amphibious transport, and the Sea Dart, and they wanted to put on a show to show off their product. Unfortunately, when it came time for the Sea Dart, after the Pogo had gone, the Tradewind had gone, showing how it could be effective for combined operations, and the Sea Dart goes out, the pilot took off and came by to do a high-speed approach, and when he hit the afterburner, because of the engines, as you can see the engines are high on the fuselage. When he hit the afterburner, the thrust tipped the nose down, and so the pilot pulled back on the stick to compensate. Well, these early aircraft had early versions of powered controls, and it was designed to have the power at high altitudes at high speed. Well, at the speed that he was at, it overcompensated and pulled the nose up really sharp, and that created an instant oscillation that caused the aircraft to disintegrate and break up right in front of all the press, right in front of all the brass. The aircraft split apart. The nose section of one of the skis with the pilot in it, tumbled. The rest of the engines were still running, turned into a flaming mass and flew for a little while before impacting into the water. The Navy dive crew ended up getting to the pilot pretty quickly and pulled him out of what was left of that nose, but he was injured pretty substantially. By the time they got him to the dock, he was alive when they first pulled him out, but he had passed away by the time they got him to the dock. So that was the end of this aircraft. The other four, ended up going into museums, but that was pretty much the final straw for the Sea Dart. And so there are some pictures of this aircraft. So I'll show you here. There's also some video of the incident. I'll put a link in the description to where you can see some of the video of that actual accident when it occurred. So let's take a look at those here. So let's look at the parts themselves. So everything's molded in a very dark navy blue. And we've got a very different way of putting this thing together. And this may be the reason why Aurora elected not to buy this mold. And it's a 3-piece fuselage. So the way that it works is you've got these two top halves were to go together. And then there was a bottom half that went on here. And it assembled all together like that. But there was no locator pins on here at all. There's a position pin here. And one, I think, used to be here. But there's no other locator pins anywhere on here. And in looking at this particular kit, I think there's some warpage that has occurred over time, because when you put these two together here, it doesn't line up at the front. The nose splits apart there. And then if you line that up, then the tail doesn't quite match up. So there's a little bit of warpage going on here. But it's not much detail to it at all. You got some raised panel lines and some rivets. And the rivets are what determine the difference between the 55 and 56 molds. They added the rivet detail to the 56 era kits. And a little bit of flash around there. Another interesting thing too is there are no clear parts. So you've got the window openings there, but nothing to fill those. They don't even give you like clear acetate to put in there. So you had to kind of come up with your own way of doing that. And then here's the bottom. Let's see where the hydro skis would go. Next up's the wing. This is a 1-piece molded wing, and this is a solid piece of plastic. It is heavy. But, yeah, you're going to get your, in this case, it's got some anhedral, so you're going to get that correct. And it definitely adds a lot of weight. And some of the riveting, I do notice that they do leave some space open for where the decals would go, which is nice. So it's still smooth where your decal spots would go. But you don't have the raised rivet, or the raised decal locators like a lot of other kits have. Then you do have raised lines to indicate the elevons. So that's your wing. Here's your hydro skis inside. And they do include the little wheels at the end and some rivet detail on there. It's our vertical stabilizer, all one piece. Again, it looks like they're leaving space in the rivets for the decals. Some ejector pin marks up here. And then we've got one tree. Here's our tail cone. It's got a bit of flash on that. It's when this is put on to the rear, the fuselage half is going to be blanked off there, so you're not going to see inside. But looking through the fuselage intakes, you'll be able to see straight in to an empty fuselage. Then you've got some of the struts for the skis, which have got a little bit of detail to them, which is pretty nice. Then we've got a loose set of these. Pretty nicely molded. And then we've got a nose cone, which actually comes to a pretty good point. Pretty nicely molded for that sharp of a point there. So that's it. Not a whole lot to this kit. So as I mentioned before, there's 4 remaining aircraft. One's in storage, the original prototype's in storage at the Smithsonian. San Diego Aerospace Museum's got one displayed outside. Remember seeing that, as a kid, and was impressed with the look of that airplane. So getting this kit kind of reminded me of those days of going to that museum a lot. There's one at the Wings of Freedom in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and the final one's at the Florida Air Museum in Lakeland, Florida, at the airport. So this kit was, as I mentioned before, originally issued in 55. This issue's 56. Another company called Mandrel got a hold of the molds and did a very short run of these in 1988. And then Rareplane Detective did another run of them in 89. They did a run of 1,000 kits. And on the instruction sheets, it's got individual numbers for each one of those. And then that's it. As far as any other kits on the Sea Dart, there's not a lot out there, surprisingly. This seems like an airplane that deserves to have a new modern kit done for it. The other stuff that I was able to find, there's a couple of VacuForm kits, one by Air Model, another one by Execuform, both in 72nd. There was a resin kit done by Collect Air in 1/48 scale. And the only regular injection molded kit that I was able to locate is one by Mach 2, also in 1/72nd scale. It's one of their very first kits in 1991. And from what I've read on reviews online, it's an extremely poor fitting kit. I think it's when Mach 2 was first kind of, getting their act together. So there's not much out there on this. So if you're looking to make a nice looking Sea Dart, this is probably one of your best options on it right now. You could probably do a lot of super detailing on this and use this as a good basis to make a nice plane. There is somebody online I did see is reproducing the decals for this. So if you do get one of these or one of the other later reissues from the 80s, those decals are now 40 years old. It might behoove you to order up some of those remade decals. So that's about it. Have you made one of these? Or have you made any one of the other Strombecker plastic kits? Let us know about it in the comments. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.